The blood on the console had dried hours ago. Dravis pressed his three-fingered hand against the playback controls and watched the battle footage for the seventh time. His compound eyes tracked every movement in the grainy recording. The human medical transport sat in the middle of a bombed-out valley, while plasma fire rained down from all directions. Standard evacuation protocol stated clearly that non-combat vessels should retreat when enemy forces surrounded them. Every species in the Galactic Coalition followed this rule. Medical ships carried wounded soldiers who could not fight. They had no weapons beyond basic defensive shields. Logic demanded they escape to preserve the injured personnel aboard. The humans had not followed logic. Dravis paused the footage and magnified the image. The transport bore scorch marks across its hull. 3 of its 4 engines showed critical damage. Any reasonable crew would have surrendered or attempted escape during the initial bombardment. The timestamp showed 11 hours had passed since the first enemy contact. 11 hours of continuous fighting. His assistant Pollock entered the observation room carrying data tablets. The young officer's face showed confusion mixed with something approaching fear. Dravis understood that emotion well. He had felt it himself when first reviewing these reports. "Sir, the casualty assessment you requested," Pollock said. He set the tablets on the desk with shaking hands. The human medical crew consisted of 9 personnel. By the 4th hour of engagement, medical scanners detected that 3 of them had entered cardiac arrest. Dravis looked up sharply. "They died." "Technically, yes, sir. Their hearts stopped. Brain activity ceased for periods ranging from 2 to 4 minutes. Pollock pulled up medical readouts on the main display. Then their teammates revived them using emergency protocols and they continued fighting. The concept made Dravis's stomach turn. He had served in the Galactic Intelligence Division for 23 cycles. He had analyzed countless battles and studied the military doctrines of 47 species. None of them did this. When soldiers died, they stayed dead. Medical personnel retreated to treat the living. Resources went to those who could be saved. Humans apparently disagreed with this fundamental principle. "Show me the final hour," Dravis commanded. The footage jumped forward. The transport now sat at a severe angle with half its hull buried in debris. Bodies in human military uniforms lay scattered around the perimeter. Some moved weakly. Others remained completely still. The defensive shields had failed completely. Only small arms fire came from inside the vessel now. Dravis watched as 2 humans dragged a third back toward the transport. The wounded soldier left a trail of dark blood across the dusty ground. Enemy fire kicked up explosions around them. One of the rescuers took a direct hit that should have killed him instantly. He stumbled but kept moving. His companion grabbed the wounded soldier with one hand and the injured rescuer with the other, pulling both toward safety. "How many survived?" Dravis asked quietly. 47 of the original 53 wounded inside the transport. All 9 crew members lived, though 3 required extensive medical treatment for injuries sustained during the engagement. Pollock hesitated. "Sir, our tactical assessment indicates they should have all died. The statistical probability of survival was less than 2%. Dravis turned off the footage and sat in silence. The humans had violated every sensible military protocol. They had risked 9 healthy crew members to protect 47 wounded soldiers who could not contribute to the fighting. They had revived dead teammates and put them back into combat. They had chosen to stand and fight when retreat meant survival. And somehow they had won. The enemy forces had eventually withdrawn. The official reports claimed equipment malfunctions and communication breakdowns forced the retreat. Dravis did not believe those reports. He had reviewed the enemy commander's personal logs. The commander had written simply, "They would not stop. We killed them and they came back. We cannot fight ghosts." That word kept appearing in intelligence reports about human combat operations. Ghosts. Soldiers who should be dead but continued fighting. units that suffered catastrophic casualties but refused to surrender, medical teams that violated every tactical principle to save their wounded. Dravis opened his personal files and created a new folder. He labeled it Human Ghost Protocols and began importing all related reports. The Battle of Broken Moon was not an isolated incident. Similar events had occurred across 18 different combat zones in the past 6 months alone. Other species fought for territory, resources, or strategic advantage. They calculated acceptable losses and made rational decisions about when to retreat. The humans fought for something else entirely, something Dravis could not yet define or understand. He pulled up a recorded transmission from the medical transport. The human commander's voice came through clearly despite heavy static interference. She was speaking to her crew during the height of the battle. "I know you're tired, I know you're scared, but there are 47 soldiers on this ship who trusted us to bring them home. We do not abandon our people. We do not leave them behind. If we die here today, we die protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That is what we signed up for. That is who we are." The transmission ended. Dravis sat motionless. The words echoed in his mind. Who we are, not what their training demanded, not what tactical doctrine required. Who they were at some fundamental level that transcended military service. Pollock cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, should I file this under combat anomalies?" Dravis shook his head slowly. "No, this is not an anomaly. This is standard human behavior." He began typing his preliminary report, "and that terrifies me more than anything else in this galaxy." His fingers moved across the keys as he documented everything he had observed. Somewhere in the files before him lay the answer to a critical question. What made humans willing to die for soldiers who were already wounded? What drove them to revive their dead and send them back into battle? What created such absolute refusal to abandon their fallen? Dravis intended to find those answers. The Galactic Coalition needed to understand this enemy that fought like ghosts and refused to accept death as final. Understanding them might be the only way to survive against them. The investigation had only just begun. Field Commander Rithais of the Halrun Defense Fleet had survived 43 military engagements without losing a single night's sleep. The testimony sitting on Dravis's desk suggested that record had ended after witnessing human search and recovery operations. Dravis reviewed the formal complaint first. Rithais had filed an official protest against human military doctrine, claiming their recovery teams posed unnecessary risks to Allied forces. The complaint listed tactical violations, resource mismanagement, and reckless endangerment. Buried beneath the professional language, Dravis detected something else: confusion, perhaps even horror. The incident occurred during a joint operation to secure mining colonies in the Outer Reach. A human reconnaissance patrol had gone missing while scouting enemy positions. Standard Galactic Coalition protocol was clear. If a patrol did not report back within 48 hours and could not be located via tracking systems, Command listed them as casualties and moved forward with existing intelligence. The humans had different ideas about acceptable timelines. Dravis opened the detailed logs. The human patrol consisted of 6 soldiers. They had last transmitted coordinates from deep inside contested territory. Enemy forces controlled that entire sector. Any rescue attempt would require penetrating multiple defensive lines while under constant fire. The tactical computers calculated a 78% chance of additional casualties with zero strategic benefit. Commander Rithais had personally explained these calculations to the human liaison officer. The human had listened politely, thanked him for the analysis, then requested permission to launch a recovery operation. Permission was denied. The mission was deemed too dangerous for the potential outcome. The 6 missing soldiers were honored in a brief ceremony and their names added to the casualty lists. The operation continued as planned. 6 days later, a human recovery team inserted themselves into the combat zone without authorization. Dravis read through Rithai's eyewitness account with growing disbelief. 30 human soldiers had stolen a transport under cover of darkness. They had disabled their tracking beacons and communication systems to avoid being ordered back. They penetrated enemy territory using routes that should have been impossible to navigate. The recovery team fought through 3 separate ambushes. They sustained 14 casualties during the insertion alone. Any rational military force would have turned back, cut their losses, preserved the remaining personnel for missions with actual strategic value. The humans pressed forward. Rithais had monitored the situation from the command ship. His tactical display showed the recovery team's estimated position based on enemy engagement reports. Each firefight brought them closer to the last known coordinates of the missing patrol. Each engagement reduced their numbers and depleted their ammunition. What happened next appeared in the official records as a footnote. The recovery team reached the target coordinates and spent 6 hours searching the area. They found the missing patrol. All 6 soldiers were dead. They had been killed during the initial enemy contact nearly a week earlier. The recovery team gathered the remains. They collected personal effects, identification tags, and equipment. Then they fought their way back through enemy lines carrying their dead. Dravis paused reading and rubbed his eyes. The mathematics made no sense. 30 soldiers had risked their lives. 14 were wounded, 2 critically. All of this to recover 6 corpses with no intelligence value and no tactical significance. Rithai's complaint included a recording of the conversation he had with the human recovery team leader after they returned. Dravis played the audio file. "You violated direct orders." Rithai's voice carried clear anger. "You endangered this entire operation. You lost 14 soldiers recovering bodies. Bodies, Lieutenant, they were already dead." The human response came calm and steady. "Yes, sir, they were dead. That is exactly why we went." "Explain that logic to me. What possible military justification exists for this waste of resources?" A long pause followed. When the human spoke again, his voice had changed, softer but somehow harder at the same time. "Those 6 soldiers were somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's best friend. Back home, there are families who need to bury their loved ones, who need closure, who need to know that we did not abandon them in some distant battlefield." The human took a breath. "We made a promise to every person who serves. We bring you home, alive if possible, dead if necessary, but we bring you home. That promise will get more of your people killed." "Yes, sir, it will, and we will go get them too." The recording ended. Dravis sat in silence. He had studied military psychology extensively. Every species formed bonds with their unit members. Soldiers mourned fallen comrades, but mourning did not override tactical necessity. Grief did not rewrite engagement protocols. Except with humans, apparently it did. He pulled up additional reports from the same operation. The human recovery team had been disciplined officially for violating orders. They received formal reprimands in their service records. Then, 3 weeks later, every member of that team received commendations for extraordinary valor. The contradiction seemed absurd until Dravis read the commendation citations more carefully. The human military recognized 2 separate things. Yes, they had violated tactical orders. Yes, they had endangered the mission. But they had also upheld something the humans considered more important than tactics: a promise, a code, an identity. Dravis created a new entry in his growing file. He titled it Recovery Operations and began cross-referencing similar incidents. The search returned hundreds of results: humans attempting dangerous rescues, humans recovering remains from hostile territory, humans spending enormous resources to bring home their dead. One report from a human medical examiner caught his attention. It included a quote that seemed to summarize the entire philosophy. We do not measure the value of recovery by strategic benefit. We measure it by what we owe to those who served. Every person who wears this uniform deserves to come home. That debt does not expire when the heart stops beating. Dravis added the quote to his analysis. The pattern became clearer with each report. Humans did not view their dead as former assets to be written off. They viewed them as continuing obligations, debts that must be paid regardless of cost. Commander Rithais had filed his complaint because he could not understand this mindset. Dravis was beginning to suspect that understanding it might be impossible for non-humans. The bond between human soldiers seemed to exist outside normal military relationships. They called it brotherhood. The reports used that word repeatedly. Brothers and sisters in arms, family, bonds stronger than blood. Dravis made a note to investigate human family structures. Perhaps the answer lay there. Perhaps humans simply extended their kinship bonds to include everyone they served alongside. Or perhaps they had created something entirely unique. A military culture where abandoning the dead meant abandoning their own humanity. Either way, it made them extraordinarily dangerous opponents. Dr. Helvin had practiced battlefield medicine for 17 years across 9 different war zones. She had seen injuries that defied medical explanation and treated species with wildly different physiologies. None of that experience prepared her for working alongside human medics. Dravis arranged the interview in a neutral medical facility far from active combat zones. Helvin arrived carrying 3 data storage devices and a bottle of something she claimed helped with stress. She drank from it twice before speaking. They broke every rule in the medical protocols, she began without preamble. Not because they did not know better, because they simply refused to accept certain outcomes. Dravis gestured for her to continue. Helvin activated her first data device and pulled up a medical scan. This is Sergeant Rodriguez, human, male, age 29. He took shrapnel through the chest cavity during a supply run ambush. The fragments punctured both lungs and severed a major artery. She highlighted the damage on the scan. He was clinically dead within 90 seconds. Heart stopped, blood pressure 0, brain activity declining rapidly. What is the standard medical response? Record time of death, move to the next patient, preserve resources for those who can be saved. Helvin pulled up a second scan. This is the same patient 6 minutes later, heart beating, blood pressure stabilizing, brain function returning to normal ranges. Dravis studied the scans carefully. How is this possible? The human medic refused to let him die. She performed a thoracic incision in the middle of a firefight, used her bare hands to clamp the damaged artery, had another soldier breathe into Rodriguez's lungs while she manually compressed his heart. All of this while bullets were hitting the vehicle they were hiding behind. Helvin showed him combat footage from helmet cameras. The scene looked like chaos. Explosions shook the frame. Soldiers shouted warnings about enemy positions. In the center of it all, a young human woman had her hands literally inside another person's chest cavity, squeezing his heart in rhythm while talking to him. She was telling him not to die, Helvin said quietly, ordering him to stay with her, promising him he would see his daughter again, as if her words could override biological reality. Did he survive? He walked out of the hospital 3 months later, full recovery. Helvin drank from her bottle again. That should not be possible, but I have documented 43 similar cases. Humans who were medically dead but were brought back through sheer stubborn determination. Dravis made notes while Helvin prepared her next case file. The doctor's hands shook slightly as she sorted through data chips. This next one still gives me nightmares, she admitted. Corporal Stevens, severe spinal trauma during a building collapse, paralyzed from the neck down, massive internal bleeding, compound fractures in both legs. We were in an underground bunker with limited supplies and no way to call for evacuation. What was your medical assessment? Make him comfortable, administer pain medication, let him die with dignity. Helvin looked away. His team carried him 12 kilometers through enemy territory while under constant fire. 2 soldiers died protecting him during that march. When we finally reached an evacuation point, Stevens was still alive. The footage showed 4 humans taking turns carrying a makeshift stretcher. They moved in shifts, rotating the burden while maintaining defensive positions. Enemy fire forced them to take cover repeatedly. Each time they resumed moving, they checked on Stevens first before worrying about their own injuries. Why did they not leave him? Dravis asked. The tactical situation demanded it. I asked them that exact question. Helvin pulled up an audio recording. The team leader said, "We do not leave our people behind, not ever. If Stevens dies, he dies knowing we did everything possible. He dies knowing he mattered. That is worth more than tactical advantage." Dravis listened to the recording 3 times. The human spoke with absolute conviction. No hesitation, no doubt. Helvin continued through her case files. A medic who performed surgery in 0 gravity during a boarding action. A soldier who walked 15 kilometers on a shattered leg because his unit needed him. A pilot who landed a damaged shuttle with both arms broken to bring wounded teammates home. Each case showed the same pattern. Humans refusing to accept medical impossibilities. Medics who worked on patients that other species would have declared unsavable. Soldiers who continued functioning despite injuries that should have incapacitated them. Their medicine is not more advanced than ours, Helvin explained. Their surgical techniques are adequate but not exceptional. Their pharmaceutical options are limited compared to what we can offer, but they have something we lack. What is that? They refuse to give up on anyone, ever. Helvin showed him a human medical doctrine manual. She pointed to a specific passage highlighted in her notes. This is their official policy. The patient decides when treatment stops, not the doctor, not tactical necessity, the patient. As long as they are fighting to live, the medical team fights to save them. Dravis read the passage slowly. It contradicted everything he understood about battlefield triage. Resources were finite. Time was limited. Doctors made hard choices about who received treatment based on probability of survival. Humans apparently rejected that entire framework. I witnessed a human medic work on a soldier for 40 minutes, Helvin said softly. 40 minutes of continuous resuscitation. Every medical indicator said this person was dead. No pulse, no breathing, no brain activity, but the medic kept going, kept trying, kept believing. What happened? The soldier lived, woke up confused and asking what all the fuss was about. Helvin laughed, but it sounded hollow. The medic just smiled and said, "We do not decide when someone is beyond saving. We let them decide." Dravis closed his eyes and processed the information. This was not superior technology or advanced medical knowledge. This was pure determination fueled by bonds he still did not fully understand. Doctor, in your professional opinion, what makes human medicine effective? Helvin considered the question for a long time. When she answered, her voice carried a mixture of respect and unease. They care too much to follow proper protocol. They love their soldiers too fiercely to accept death as inevitable. Their medicine is not about science. It is about loyalty, about refusing to let go. She paused. And that makes them capable of miracles that violate every principle I was taught. Dravis thanked her and ended the interview. His file grew larger with each investigation. The pattern became undeniable. Humans did not fight like other species. They did not calculate losses the same way. They did not accept death as a natural end to combat service. They treated every casualty as a personal failure, every death as something to be prevented at any cost. It made them irrational, dangerous, and apparently impossible to defeat through normal attrition. The classified files appeared on Dravis's secure terminal without warning. No sender identification, no authorization codes, just 3 words stamped across the cover page in human script: the Ghost Battalion. Someone wanted him to see this, someone who understood what he was investigating. Dravis opened the first file and found enemy intelligence reports from 3 years ago. The Krenvic Empire had documented the complete destruction of the human 7th Ranger Battalion during the siege of Outer Haven. Orbital bombardment had turned their defensive position into a crater visible from space. Thermal scans showed no life signs. Wreckage analysis confirmed total unit destruction. Military record listed 217 personnel killed in action. Memorial services were held. Death benefits were paid to families. The 7th Ranger Battalion officially ceased to exist. Then 2 weeks later, the destroyed unit attacked an enemy supply depot 40 kilometers behind Krenvic lines. Dravis read the enemy after-action report 3 times. The Krenvic commander described the attack in detail. Human forces hit the depot at dawn using tactics consistent with Ranger training. They destroyed ammunition reserves, eliminated guards, and disappeared before reinforcements arrived. Standard raid protocol. Except the raiders were all supposed to be dead. The Krenvic commander had initially assumed it was a different human unit using similar tactics. Then his intelligence officers identified the attackers through recovered equipment and prisoner interrogations. The same soldiers who had been killed in the orbital strike were now operating behind enemy lines. The enemy reports used the word ghost 17 times. Dravis dug deeper into the files. Battle reports showed the 7th Rangers engaging in multiple operations over the following months. Each appearance was documented, analyzed, and confirmed. The unit existed. They were fighting. But according to all official records, they should not exist at all. Medical assessments revealed the truth behind the ghost stories. The orbital bombardment had indeed hit the Ranger position, but the humans had built underground bunkers that absorbed most of the impact. 217 soldiers became casualties. 63 died immediately. 134 survived with various degrees of injury. By standard military doctrine, the unit should have been evacuated and dissolved. The wounded needed extensive medical care. The survivors needed time to recover and process their trauma. Command should have redistributed the remaining personnel to other units. The 7th Rangers refused evacuation. Dravis found a transmission from the battalion commander to human headquarters. The message was brief and blunt. We have wounded but operational personnel. We have limited supplies but sufficient weapons. We are staying in theater. Send medical supplies and ammunition. We have work to finish. The request was denied. Orders came down explicitly commanding the Rangers to evacuate for medical treatment and unit reconstitution. The battalion acknowledged the orders and then ignored them completely. They established a field hospital in a cave system. Medics treated the wounded using salvaged supplies and equipment stripped from destroyed vehicles. Soldiers with broken bones splinted themselves and returned to active duty. Personnel with severe injuries took support roles while continuing to contribute to operations. 60% of the battalion was technically wounded. They operated anyway. Dravis watched helmet camera footage from one of their raids. The video showed soldiers moving with careful precision through enemy territory. Several limped noticeably. One had his left arm in a crude sling but carried his rifle one-handed with practiced ease. Another wore bandages around his head that covered severe burns. They moved like wounded fighters, but they fought like they had nothing to lose. The enemy communications Dravis reviewed showed growing panic. Krenvic commanders reported encountering human forces that should not exist. Units that had been destroyed kept appearing in new locations. Soldiers who had been confirmed dead showed up in combat footage. One Krenvik officer filed a report claiming supernatural involvement. He described humans who ignored fatal injuries and kept fighting, who walked through gunfire without flinching, who carried their dead onto the battlefield like shields blessed by dark gods. Dravis knew the truth was simpler but somehow more disturbing. The Rangers were not ghosts. They were just humans who refused to quit. He found personal logs from Ranger personnel. One soldier wrote about carrying his dead friend's identification tags into battle. He wrote that every time he fought for two people, himself and his fallen brother. The weight of those tags reminded him why surrender was never an option. Another soldier described watching his entire squad get hit by artillery. He was the only survivor. Instead of evacuating, he collected their personal effects and continued the mission. He wrote that leaving would mean their deaths accomplished nothing. Staying meant their sacrifice had purpose. The psychology should not work. Soldiers should break under that kind of trauma. Units should collapse when casualties reached certain percentages. Morale should fail when losses became too severe. Human morale apparently worked backward. Dravis found a report from a human military psychologist embedded with the Rangers. The doctor had tried to convince the wounded soldiers to accept evacuation. Her report documented their responses. They told me they could not leave while the mission remained unfinished, could not abandon their positions while enemies still occupied this system, could not go home while their brothers and sisters were still buried in the rubble. The psychologist had written a recommendation for mandatory evacuation based on mental health concerns. The recommendation was overruled by human command. The Rangers stayed in combat. 3 months after their official destruction, the 7th Ranger Battalion participated in the final offensive that broke the Krenvik occupation. They walked into the victory ceremony with their wounded, their dead carried on their shoulders, and their battle flags still flying. Enemy forces had started calling them the Ghost Battalion. The name stuck. Human Command officially recognized the designation. The unit now wore skull insignia on their uniforms, a reminder that they had died once and come back, a warning that killing them accomplished nothing permanent. Dravis reviewed casualty statistics. The Rangers had eventually lost 89 personnel over the full campaign. By normal military analysis, the unit should have been destroyed twice over, but they had simply absorbed the losses and kept fighting. He found a statement from the battalion commander, given during a post-war interview. "We fight for the living, we remember the dead, both give us strength. Our fallen are not gone, they march with us, they inspire us. Every soldier we lose makes us more determined to finish what they started." Dravis closed the files and sat in darkness. He finally understood what the enemy commanders meant when they called humans ghosts. It was not that humans came back from the dead. It was that death did not stop them from fighting. Their dead remained active participants in the war, carried as memories, honored as inspiration, transformed from casualties into causes. Other species mourned their losses and moved forward. Humans mourned their losses and brought them along. The dead became fuel for the living. Each sacrifice created obligation rather than weakness. It violated every principle of military psychology. It should not work. But the files proved it did work, devastatingly well. Dravis added the Ghost Battalion case to his growing report. The evidence had become overwhelming. Humans were not just willing to die for each other. They were capable of turning death itself into a weapon. Dravis realized he could not understand human military behavior without understanding human culture itself. Military doctrine came from somewhere. These ghost protocols had roots that went deeper than tactical training. He started with human history files. The database contained thousands of years of recorded warfare. Every civilization seemed to practice variations of the same theme. warriors recovering fallen comrades from ancient battlefields, elaborate death rituals for soldiers, cultural traditions centered on honoring those who died in service. One account from Earth's ancient history described soldiers from a place called Sparta. They carried their wounded and dead on their shields rather than abandon them. The practice became so fundamental to their identity that leaving the battlefield without a shield meant permanent exile. Better to die than return without your brothers. Another file detailed warriors from a nation called Rome. They traveled thousands of miles to recover the remains of legions destroyed in distant lands, not for strategic purposes, for honor, for closure, because leaving Roman soldiers unburied in foreign soil was considered a stain on their entire civilization. The pattern repeated across cultures and time periods. Japanese samurai performing burial rites for fallen enemies, Viking warriors believing that dying in battle guaranteed entrance to their paradise, Native American tribes carrying their wounded for days to reach safe territory, medieval knights paying ransom for the bodies of dead comrades. Every human culture seemed to develop similar ideas about military death and honor. Dravis found records of more recent conflicts. A war called World War II produced countless examples. Soldiers crawling into minefields to retrieve wounded friends. Pilots risking their lives to search for downed aircrew. Entire missions dedicated to recovering prisoners of war or recovering remains. One story described a human soldier who spent 3 days behind enemy lines searching for his injured friend. He found the friend dying from infected wounds. The soldier carried him 40 kilometers through hostile territory. The friend died hours before they reached safety. The soldier carried the body anyway. When asked why he risked so much for someone already dead, the soldier apparently said, "I promised his mother I would bring him home. I keep my promises." Dravis paused his research to process that statement. The soldier had made a promise to someone who was not even present at the battle, a promise to a parent thousands of miles away. That promise carried enough weight to override survival instinct and military reason. He began examining human burial traditions and memorial practices. Every culture maintained detailed records of their military dead, names carved into stone monuments, annual ceremonies to read those names aloud, families keeping photographs and personal effects for generations. The humans had a phrase that appeared repeatedly in their memorial inscriptions: "We will remember them." Simple words that seemed to carry enormous cultural weight. Dravis interviewed a human veteran named Walsh. The old soldier had served in multiple conflicts over a 30-year career. He agreed to meet in a small cafe rather than a formal military setting. "You want to understand why we bring our people home," Walsh said. It was not a question. "Yes, I need to understand the cultural foundation for these practices." Walsh stirred his drink slowly. His hands bore scars from old injuries. "It is not complicated. We fight as units, as teams, as families. When you train with someone, eat with them, live with them in terrible conditions, they become more than fellow soldiers. They become brothers, sisters, the people you would die for." Many species form bonds with unit members, but they accept casualties as inevitable. So do we. We know people die in war. We are not stupid. Walsh looked directly at Dravis. But accepting that people die and accepting that we should leave them behind are two different things. We can acknowledge death while still refusing to abandon our dead. Dravis made notes. Walsh continued without prompting. "I served with a soldier named Liu, good person, funny, always shared his rations, saved my life twice." Walsh's expression darkened. "He got hit during an ambush, died instantly. We were under heavy fire. Command ordered us to withdraw, leave the dead and get the living out safely." "Did you follow orders?" "We tried, made it about 50 meters before we stopped. Just stopped moving, could not do it." Walsh shook his head. Our squad leader looked at us and said, "We are not leaving Liu to those bastards." Everyone agreed. We all agreed. Turned around and went back under fire to get his body. That decision could have gotten you all killed. Yes, it could have. 3 of us were wounded during the recovery, but we got Liu out, brought him home to his family, let them bury him properly. Walsh met Travis's eyes again. That was worth the risk. Why? He was already dead. Recovering his body served no tactical purpose. Walsh was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice had changed, softer but intense. Because Liu trusted us. Every soldier who serves trusts that if the worst happens, their team will not leave them in some ditch in a foreign land. That trust is sacred. Breaking it means breaking something fundamental about who we are. Travis wrote down the word trust. It appeared frequently in human military literature, but seemed to carry different meaning than he initially understood. Walsh pulled out a worn piece of metal on a chain. A dog tag Travis recognized. Identification carried by all human soldiers. This belonged to my friend Liu. His family gave it back to me after the funeral, said he would want me to have it. Walsh gripped the tag tightly. I carry it into every fight. Reminds me what I am fighting for. Not just victory, not just survival. I fight to honor the people who did not make it home. I fight so their sacrifice means something. Your dead inspire your living soldiers. More than inspire, they obligate us. Every person we lose creates a debt. We owe it to them to finish what they started, to make their deaths count for something, to ensure nobody forgets they existed and what they gave up. Travis finally understood. Human military culture was built on mutual obligation that transcended death. Soldiers promised to bring each other home. They promised to remember. They promised to honor sacrifice by continuing the mission. Breaking those promises meant betraying their own identity. Walsh ordered another drink. You know what the hardest part is? It is not the fighting. It is the memorial services, standing there while they read the names, watching families cry, knowing that next time it might be your name being read. Does that fear make soldiers less effective? No, makes us more careful with each other's lives, makes us fight harder to protect our teams, makes us remember what is actually at stake. Walsh finished his drink. We do not fight like machines. We fight like people who care too much to quit. Travis thanked him and ended the interview. His research had revealed the source of human ghost protocols. It was not military innovation. It was cultural inheritance spanning thousands of years. Every human civilization had developed the same core belief. The dead deserve honor. The fallen deserve to come home. Sacrifice deserves remembrance. Those beliefs shaped their military culture in profound ways. Other species fought for objectives. Humans fought for each other. That difference made them uniquely dangerous and uniquely difficult to defeat. Travis finalized his report in the early hours before dawn. The document had grown to over 400 pages of evidence, testimony, and analysis. Everything pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity could not be defeated using conventional military calculations. He prepared the summary for the Galactic Council with careful precision. Every word needed to be accurate. Every assessment needed to be supported by evidence. The Council made decisions that affected trillions of lives. They needed the truth. The opening section laid out the core problem. Human casualties did not weaken their military effectiveness the way similar losses weakened other species. A human unit at 50% casualties fought harder than a fresh unit. They drew strength from their losses rather than breaking under them. Standard attrition warfare was ineffective. Traditional siege tactics failed. Conventional military doctrine assumed that increasing enemy casualties eventually forced surrender. Humans violated that assumption completely. Travis included casualty statistics from 18 major engagements. The pattern was consistent. As human losses increased, their combat intensity increased proportionally. Units that should have collapsed kept fighting. Soldiers who should have retreated pressed forward. The psychological impact on enemy forces proved even more significant than the tactical effects. Dravis had reviewed hundreds of enemy after-action reports. Commanders described fighting humans as psychologically devastating. Soldiers who refused to die created fear that spread through enemy ranks. One enemy officer had written, "We kill them, but they come back. We destroy their units, but they reform. We inflict casualties that should break their will, but instead strengthen their resolve." How do you defeat an enemy who treats death as motivation rather than deterrent? Dravis had no answer to that question. His report could only document the phenomenon and warn about its implications. He included footage of a human memorial ceremony. The council needed to see the cultural foundation supporting these military practices, understand where the ghost protocols came from. The video showed thousands of humans gathered in a massive outdoor amphitheater. They stood in silence while names were read aloud. Each name represented a soldier who died in service. The reading took hours. Nobody left. Nobody looked away. The ceremony included personal effects placed on a memorial wall, photographs, letters, medals, small objects that held meaning to families and friends. Each item told a story about someone who would not return home. Dravis watched human soldiers standing at attention with tears streaming down their faces. They were not ashamed of their grief. They wore it openly, shared it publicly, transformed it into something that bound them together. At the end of the ceremony, a human officer spoke briefly. Dravis included the transcript in his report. "We gather here to remember those who gave everything. We speak their names so they are not forgotten. We honor their sacrifice by continuing their mission. They believed in something worth fighting for, worth dying for. We will not let that belief die with them." The crowd responded in unison, "We will remember them." Simple words, but Dravis had learned they carried immense weight in human culture. Remembering the dead was not passive reflection. It was active obligation. The living carried responsibility to honor the fallen by completing what they started. His report included a section on tactical recommendations. The council would want guidance on how to engage human forces effectively. Dravis provided what analysis he could. Avoid prolonged conflicts. Human morale increased over time as they accumulated reasons to fight. Quick, decisive actions worked better than extended campaigns. Never assume casualty rates will force surrender. Humans defined acceptable losses differently. They would accept catastrophic casualties to achieve objectives they considered important. Understand that human units bonded in ways that made them unpredictable. Standard military psychology did not apply. Threats that should break morale often strengthened it instead. His final recommendation was simple and stark. If possible, avoid military conflict with humanity entirely. The cost of victory against humans who refused to quit exceeded any reasonable strategic benefit. Dravis sat back and reviewed his work. The report documented everything he had learned: the medical impossibilities, the recovery operations, the ghost battalion, the cultural traditions that made humans willing to die for ideals rather than just tactical objectives. He added one final section, a personal assessment based on his months of investigation. Humans fought for something beyond territory or resources. They fought for identity, for honor, for the promise made to every person who served. That promise created bonds that death could not sever. Their greatest weapon was not technology or tactics. It was their absolute refusal to let go, refusal to abandon wounded comrades, refusal to leave dead soldiers on foreign battlefields, refusal to forget the names and faces of those who sacrificed everything. Other species would view this as weakness, emotional attachment that clouded rational decision-making. Dravis had initially shared that assessment. Now he understood it was the opposite. Human emotional bonds made them stronger, more resilient, more dangerous. They created networks of mutual obligation that persisted beyond death itself. Every fallen soldier became inspiration for the living. Every sacrifice created debt that survivors felt compelled to honor. Dravis titled his final section, Understanding the Ghost Protocols. He wrote that humans did not have ghost protocols in any official sense. They had culture, tradition, values passed down through thousands of years of warfare. Those values taught them that some things mattered more than survival, that loyalty transcended death, that promises to fallen comrades must be kept regardless of cost. These beliefs made humans behave in ways that seemed irrational to outside observers, made them take risks that violated tactical doctrine, made them refuse surrender when defeat seemed inevitable. But those same beliefs created military forces that could not be broken by conventional means, could not be demoralized by casualties, could not be defeated by simply inflicting losses. Dravis concluded with a warning he knew would disturb the council. Humanity's strength lies not in their weapons or their numbers. It lies in their refusal to accept that death ends obligation. Their fallen remain active participants in every battle, carried as memory, honored as inspiration, transformed from casualties into causes. They call them ghosts. Perhaps they are right. Perhaps humans fight alongside spirits of their dead, drawing strength from sacrifice, finding purpose in remembrance. Whatever the explanation, the effect is clear. Humans cannot be defeated by killing them. Each death only strengthens their resolve. Each sacrifice creates new reasons to fight. They do not fear death, they fear forgetting. Dravis encrypted the report and prepared it for transmission to the Galactic Council. His investigation was complete. The evidence spoke for itself. He pulled up one final video file, current combat footage from an ongoing operation. Human forces engaged in another desperate fight against overwhelming odds. Casualties mounted steadily. Any rational force would have withdrawn. The humans pressed forward. Dravis watched them fight with the same intensity he had seen in every other recording. The same refusal to quit, the same willingness to die for soldiers beside them. He understood now what he was watching, not just military operations, a culture expressing its deepest values through warfare. Humans fighting not just to win, but to honor every person who fell along the way. They carried their dead with them, in their memories, in their motivation, in the promises they made to bring everyone home. The galaxy called them ghosts because that was easier than accepting the truth. Humans had found a way to make death itself serve their cause. Dravis transmitted his report and closed the files. The council would read his assessment and make their own decisions, but he had given them what they needed, the truth about humanity's most devastating capability. Their ghosts were real, and they would never stop fighting.